Let's talk about The Last Duel, which we have talked about on the programme before.
Yes.
Because its director and one of its stars appeared, and we had a very nice chat with Jodie and Sir Ridley. But it is now out and everyone else can watch it.
Yeah, so the story is a Rashomon-like telling
Just explain what that means.
So Rashomon is a film in which we see stories told from multiple different, same story told from different perspectives. So in the case of this is Ridley Scott's epic based on the true story account of the last legally sanctioned judicial duel in France. The judicial duel is basically you believe that God will choose the righteous winner. That's the theory behind it.
So whoever wins,
God had chosen them to do it. So it is literally, or believed to be literally, putting it into the hand of God. And so the story revolves around three characters, all of whom get to tell their version of events. So the first version of events that we hear is Jean de Carrouges, played by Matt Damon, who tell me we begin with the duel. Sorry, I have to do this. We begin with the beginning of the duel, and then we spiral back to see this. So Jean de Carrouges, Matt Damon, tells a story in which at the Battle of Limoges, he saves his friend Jacques Legree's life, and his friend then basically double crosses him, takes his land, steals his inheritance, and then feloniously and carnally takes his wife, who has then accused him of rape. Then we get Jacques' version, in which there is no claim to the land. The whole thing is Jean being peevish. And he says, and it's a very good performance by Adam Driver, who says, she offered only the customary protests because she is a lady. And he insists that his advances were not against her. Well, in his version, she is, they are part of, he says this absolutely terrible thing about we couldn't help ourselves. And then finally you get Marguerite de Carrouges, who is played by Jodie Comer, which is the most eye-opening version. None of these are plot spoilers, incidentally. The whole plot is laid out at the beginning. And in her version of the story, it is very much a story about a land in which, and a time in which women have no judicial or social power. And actually, both Jean and Jacques, and indeed the entire surrounding world, view women as property. There is a central line about rape not being a crime against the woman, but against the woman's guardian, in this case, the husband. So the story is therefore it's an interesting story, and it's told in a way that is attempting to do a kind of a tripartite. You look at it this way, you look at it that way, you look at it that way. I think there is little question about which way the story is to be believed. And what's interesting, we'll talk about this in a moment, is what the differences are or aren't. But the key thing is that in that third version, the film has three writers: Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Nicole Holofcener. Is it Holofcener or Holofcener? Holofcener?
It's one of those.
I think Holofcener.
Okay.
I may be wrong. And essentially what they did was they divided writing duties amongst the male writers were handling the male perspectives. Nicole Holofcener was bringing what she said was a different voice to the female perspective. Here is a clip.
You knew what would happen to me should you lose this duel. You knew, and you didn't tell me.
God will not punish those who tell the truth.
My fate and our child's fate will be written not by God's will, by which old man will tire first.
How dare you speak to me this way?
What if I to lose? I begged you to find another way, and now I might be burned alive.
I am risking my life for you.
You are risking my life so you can fight your enemy and save your pride. And that could render our child an orphan. Or did you not think of that?
Now, the interesting thing is that in many ways, the whole movie is summed up by that clip. The fact that this is really about these men finding an excuse to have this battle between them, in which Marguerite is kind of completely sidelined, and she's the person who's sort of speaking the truth of the circumstance in which women find themselves. There's also the thing about that she might be burned at the stake because if God decides that Jacques Legree, Adam Driver's character, is telling the truth, then she is to be, I think it's hanged first and then, but I mean, just a horrible, because God has decided that what she is saying is not the truth. This is a sort of, as I said, interesting idea. You know, Rashomon meets straw dogs with added medieval mud. I think the problem is that the film is a better idea than it is a film. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. The first one is I think it does get bogged down in the Ridley Scott world-building milieu. There is an awful lot of, you know, mud and blood and pestilential weather and, you know, fluttering poultry and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of period detail going on. There is a lot of sweeping shots and vistas. And the second thing is, I think in order to tell this story sensitively, in order to tell this story without missteps, you'd really, you know, it requires great subtlety. And although there is great subtlety in some of the performances, I think particularly Jodie Comer, who was on the show with Ridley Scott and was, I thought, you know, spoke very, very eloquently about the film. I don't think the film is subtle enough to deal with all of the complexities of the subject matter. And the third thing is, I'm not entirely convinced that the Rashomon structure actually does exactly what the script wants it to do. In fact, there is a part of that, you know, seeing the same story told from the three different perspectives thing, that although there are subtle distinctions between certain versions, that as a dramatic device, it doesn't, for example, work as well as it does in Rashomon, which is a rather more kind of, you know, I think successful movie. So I think its heart is in the right place. I think there are moments in the script that do absolutely strike to the core. I think there are some good performances, particularly Jodie Comer. I think the direction feels like, you know, the whole thing builds up to one great big battle, which is very, very well staged, but it feels a bit like a rather heavy hammer with which to address this particular. I think it's a perfect example of a film in which it is less than the sum of its parts. Because as I'm talking about it and I'm saying all these things, I'm thinking, well, that is good and that is good and that is good and that is good. But then there are the other things, which are, well, for the accents, I think, are a problem. One of them is that they're not speaking what they.
And the minstrels, you haven't mentioned the minstrels. The music,
the minstrels, who you do imagine will start singing "Bravely Brave Sir Robin," bravely
Rode
brave.
forth from Camelot.
And the accent thing is weird because what they're doing is the accents. They work with a dialect coach who they wanted to make the accents slightly different, so they weren't sort of contemporary accents, but they were quite. But there is a weird thing going on, which is that people are talking slightly strangely, but not quite. So it is a real mixed bag of voices, and those things. I think there is an element of camp to some of it. It's like when you say the minstrels thing. I mean, the scenes in the ale houses with the tankards and all that sort of stuff, and that's when you have literally got the minstrels there, and it is a little bit like ham and spam and jam a lot, and we have to push the pram a lot. You are getting dangerously close to that stuff. So I think it is less than the sum of its parts. You?
I think I agree with you about Jodie Comer. I agree. I think Adam Driver is terrific, partly because he looks as though he comes from France in the 14th century. He just has an ancient look.
He looks like he's in a goth.
As opposed to Matt Damon, who just looks like he's from Monty Python.
And the mullet from hell.
Yes, the mullet from hell. But mainly, I think, is you say there are subtle differences in the telling of the central sexual assault. And I feel it. When we watch essentially the rape for a second time, I'm thinking this is exactly the same. There might be a subtle difference, but actually I'm now watching exactly the same attack for the second time, and I don't see any difference. From that point on, it just felt very exploitative. And although the final duel is brilliant, I did think the final gut-wrenching, literally gut-wrenching scene,
yes, exactly.
At the end, they were relying on, for all their best intentions, it was FemJep, it was female jeopardy, because Jodie Comer is going to have a terrifying ending, depending on who wins the fight. But I'm interested that you said that the Rashomon structure didn't deliver what it thought it could deliver, because I just thought the differences in their story are not great enough to justify watching a woman being raped twice.
Okay.
And at that point, I thought, I don't think this has worked.
Well, if I'm to play devil's advocate, I would say that it would be impossible to come out of the film believing that the men and the male society in which this is happening is anything other than absolutely guilty, or guilty as charged. But I just, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. I think it
But it's Adam Driver's version. He's the guy who does the assault, and Jodie Comer, who is assaulted. Their versions of this are not that dissimilar. So therefore, I'm not quite.
No, it's just that the Adam Driver version has got the thing in which he says, that he says, oh well, she put up the protestations because she is a lady, which is this absolutely poisonous thing at the heart of it, which is that he feels, and in fact Ridley Scott said this in the interview, he feels that of course everybody is completely compliant to him because he is a hideous, narcissistic, chauvinistic pig. But then he's in a society which is hideously chauvinistic, and the film begins with a woman, being dressed in black, being put on top of a bonfire, because if her husband fails to kill this bloke in this absurd spectacle, they'll burn her at the stake for being, well, it's effectively for being a witch, isn't it?
And that's where the Python stuff comes back. Anyway, okay, so
I think the overall it doesn't work, but I think there are some interesting ideas in there. But I think it does. Some interesting ideas in there, but I think it doesn't work.